So good morning. I figured you guys should join along as we take Alvin, the D110, for a test drive. You can actually be in the passenger seat with me. You can hear the noises, and I'll give you some history about the truck and what all we did to it. So let's get going. You'll notice first thing, the key's actually on the left-hand side. Starts up. It's been a very cold night. We got a pretty hard frost, but you see it starts up nicely. It is a diesel. It's a 2.5 liter turbo diesel. But of course we did our magic to it. So you're going to be able to get to hear the sounds and, well, you're going to get to see a lot of stuff. So let's go. So we're in upstate New York, and we definitely get some winters, and a black cat just ran across. Oh boy. But hopefully it's going to be a good luck day. It is almost Halloween, so I think that was a prop. First thing, let's talk about the speed, the peppiness of it. We're already doing 50. And it is the 2.5 liter turbo diesel. So I get a lot of people saying, oh, I want to put a different motor in there, you know, at least on social media. I get a lot of that, and my response is why? Because this motor already has so much power and so much speed that you would not be able to use it unless you wanted to end up in jail. And then you also have to think too, how are you going to use the vehicle? What's it going to be for? I mean, this is totally capable to do trips. I've done, I don't know, I've logged hundreds of thousands of miles in Defenders and traveling all over. And I mean, in upstate New York, we're at the foothills of the Catskills. So definitely a lot of mountains, and we don't have any problems. This is a 5-speed manual transmission, definitely the transmission of choice. So Alvin, the D110, being a 1996 model, and I have a lot of people ask me, well, what's the best model? And I say anything with the 2.5 liter turbo diesel, those are the best model. This one, the color is a color that you absolutely have to see in person. Everyone that's seen it in person absolutely loves it. It is a deep metallic brown with a mahogany undertone. In the sun, it is spectacular. And then the roof is a sepia brown, which is a non-metallic color. So the color, it really is beautiful. Videos and pictures will not do this color justice, but everyone that sees it in person, like I said, they absolutely love it. You know, it's interesting, brown has never been a popular color on vehicles. So when you see it, it's, you know, it's rare, and it definitely stands out. This one does have louvers cut into the bonnet. Those louvers serve no purpose whatsoever other than getting the top of the motor dirty when it rains or when pollen starts to be really active. But it does make it look more rugged. It is a Puma bonnet, which the Puma bonnet was a hood that came out in 2007. But I just like the looks of them. So as I said, a lot of hills. We're climbing a hill. I'm probably giving it 20% accelerator, if that. and no problem. I do have to remind myself it is not a sports car, so as I'm rolling through the twisties, you know, have to be a little careful in that. So we'll just pull up to the stop sign and we'll just sit here for a second. You can hear the clack of the diesel motor. You'll notice it's not very loud. But I think that's a magical sound, and I know a lot of times when people come to visit and we go for a test drive that they've never been in a Defender before, that they do love that sound. The benefit of a diesel versus the gasoline Land Rover, meaning the original Rover gasoline motor, that the 2.5 liter turbo diesel is a fuel injected motor. It's a mechanical fuel injection. It does not have a computer. So talk about reliability, definitely reliable. And talking about reliability, where a lot of people think a Land Rover Defender is not reliable, and that's because they have a black cloud over their head. Because the company British Leyland that used to own Land Rover years ago also owned MG, Jaguar, Aston Martin, all the British brands. So they got that black cloud because they had a lot of electronic problems, meaning the other models. But the Land Rover Defender was always highly reliable, and that's why you've seen them being used as fire trucks, police cars, military vehicles, tow trucks, and people doing, you know, in the Sahara. So doing trips where there is no parts, there is no mechanics, there's actually nothing, and even fuel's hard to get. The 2.5 turbo diesel motor is an interesting motor that it can run on some really poor quality fuel and just keep going. It's a fantastic motor. And then in relation to where some people like to do the LS3 swaps, the Corvette swaps, it really doesn't make sense, because then you're putting 500 to 600 horsepower in a vehicle that has the aerodynamics of a brick. So you would create a tremendous amount of noise. But the bigger thing is you don't have traction control, you do not have ABS, you don't have any of those safety features that a Corvette would have. So if you're wanting that Corvette sports car motor, I say buy a Corvette, and then if you want the ultimate of cool, then you buy a Defender with the classic setup, because it's going to go up in value, versus if you put a Corvette motor in it or any other motor from any other manufacturer, it's going to go down in value. So then you have a depreciating asset versus an asset that's going to continue to go up in value. Because there's no reason to create a Frankenstein truck or Frankenstein Defender, because as you'll see, let's go. First gear, second gear, third gear. Third gear is really a high gear for you that can, 50 to 60 miles an hour. The Defender does not have a tachometer. I mean, you can always put one, but it would be very small. You do it by sound. People ask about automatic transmission. Yes, definitely. You can do an automatic transmission in a Defender, but part of the enjoyment is shifting through the gears. And it has a tremendous amount of torque, meaning that you can really lug it down. So we're going to slow down and I'll show you what I mean, that this manual transmission is the easiest to drive. I mean, a lot of people think, oh boy, it's going to be hard to learn how to drive. I've never driven one, or I haven't driven one in 20 years. So I'm in third gear and I'm just letting it roll. I'm going to slow it down a little more to lug the motor down. So it's lugging a little more, almost 10. And that's in third gear. So you think about if you're in traffic, if you're in bumper to bumper traffic, you can just put it in the proper gear and lug it down and slow. You don't have to be constantly changing gears. So let's lug it down a little more, drop it down into second. So let's just pretend I'm in that bumper to bumper traffic. Easy enough. Applying the brake. You can hear it lugging. So now we're going to go into first. And again, just lugging it. All right, so 5-speed manual transmission. It is full-time 4-wheel drive. You have your transfer case, so if it's winter conditions or slippery conditions, you can switch the transfer. You can lock the differential so your front and rear axles are turning at the same speed. So you have a 4 low, 4 high, and then you have 4 low, 4 high again. The 4 low, 4 high is where the transfer case is not locking everything together, and then the other one is where it locks everything together. So it depends on the conditions, the road conditions. The amazing thing about the Land Rover Defender 2 is with the 2.5 liter turbo diesel, it's highly fuel efficient. I can easily get, upper 20s to low 30 per gallon. So depending on the conditions, do you have a lot of mountains and everything, but low 30s is not uncommon at all. And parts are plentiful, parts are easy to find, they're very easy to work on, but they're bulletproof. With the turbo motor, or with the diesel motor, diesel actually runs off of compression versus a gasoline motor runs off of combustion. So point being, the diesel motor is a much cooler running motor, talking about temperatures. Therefore, the longevity of it, meaning how long of a service life will you get, will be extremely long. I've seen a number of turbo diesel motors in the Defenders with 500, 600,000 miles without issues, just driving great. Tune-up on one of these is oil change, fuel filter, and that's your tune-up. You have to adjust the valves occasionally, but low maintenance vehicles. Like I said, parts are plentiful and parts are inexpensive on these. A lot of people think, oh, Land Rover, luxury vehicle. Well, yeah, we build them into a luxury vehicle, but they were originally built for farmers. I mean, Land Rover's been in existence over 60 years. The Defender itself, as of doing this video in 2022, has been a 33-year run. And the body style has been unchanged. In fact, it's one of the longest running vehicles of a consistent body style. So 1983 was the first year of the 110. And this is the interesting part. So 1983, they came out with the 110 first. The next year was the 90. And that's what they called it. They called it the D110, and then they called it the D90. The next year, it was not called the Defender in 1983. It didn't get the name Defender until 1990, late 1990. And the reason they got the name Defender in 1990 is because Land Rover came out with, the Discovery, and so that's where they started calling it the Defender D110, Defender D90. And the number does stand for something. D110, technically, it stands for the wheelbase. In other words, of course, they round numbers a lot of times, but 110 inches from center of axle to center of axle. And then D90, of course, is 90 inches, but technically it's really 93. And then there's the D130. So, twisty road, let's just let you hear the sounds. 5th gear. And the roads here are very bumpy, very twisty, and very uneven. So you can hear my keys jangling a little bit, but you don't hear any squeaks. You don't hear any wind noise other than the wind hitting the windscreen. And again, aerodynamics of a brick, very straight windscreen. shift down, coming into the corners. So as for the interior, the seats that are in this build, and this is Alvin, by the way, these are called Puma Premium seats. And the Puma Premium seats, in my opinion, are probably the most comfortable seats that are, let's say, offer a lot of variety. They're not a real hugging seat. It's more of a flatter seat, but it's a comfortable seat versus, an MK2 seat or, something that you would see in one of our other builds. Puma seat's probably my most popular seat that I end up going with, that I choose for clients, just because of the comfort. I mean, you can easily sit in these seats all day long driving and come out and be fresh. A lot of headroom. I have enough room to wear my Stetson, no problem at all. And if you're a tall individual, yes, the seat can be brought back farther. That's easy enough to do. The interesting part about the Defender is the Defender was originally built as a right-hand drive. And Land Rover said, all right, well, we're going to build some left-hand drives for countries that drive on the right side of the road, needing a left-hand drive. So like Poland, Italy, France, places like that. But they did not retool the cabin. So on the left side, where I'm sitting, the cockpit's a little smaller than it is on the right side. So your passenger on a left-hand drive Defender, the passenger actually has more room than the driver. So as I'm sitting here, you'll see that the comfortable spot to put your arm is right on the door rest. It's like it was almost made perfectly for that. And then the center cubby, what we do with the center cubby is based on your measurements. We design that center cubby so it becomes a perfect armrest. So you're almost like sitting in your recliner. The seats are heated, and they are 100% leather, meaning it's not just leather on the seating surface, it's leather on the sides and leather on the back. It's 100% cowhide. Everything's leather. The headliner's an Alcantara suede. This one does have a sunroof on it. So anytime you start adding more things like that, like sunroofs and panoramic roofs, you are going to pick up more wind noise, but you are going to get more light. In fact, I mean, the sun just came out and I'm squinting a little bit. Things we do is sound deadening, extensive sound deadening, thicker carpet. Sound deadening's through the entire cabin. It's on the roof, it's in the doors, it's on the bulkhead firewall that we know in the States. The floorboard. We're going to slow down. This is a pretty sharp corner. And again, I have to remind myself this is not a sports car. So talking about sports cars though, we can definitely design a Defender to be more of a sports car-like ride. We've definitely done that with builds like Hayrod. This one has been lifted. It has approximately 3 inches of a suspension lift. It does have off-road springs. It has proper shocks that are valved. It is riding on BF Goodrich KM3, which is a mud terrain tire. It's not an all-terrain tire. So you're getting some of that tire noise because these are strictly mud tires. So anytime you lift a Defender, you do sacrifice being able to carve through the corners. I know some people chuckle at that, saying, oh, a Defender it doesn't carve through the corners. Well, actually it does, if you build it to do such. So Hayrod, which was my D110 double cab in a Havana gray, we called that Bulldog. dropped it by an inch. Stiffer bushing, stiffer suspension, versus this one. It's not stiffer because we want to be able to have all the articulation. A Land Rover Defender, one of the big changes that they made when they came out with it versus the Series, because before the Defender, or before the 110 and the 90, they had what was called Series 1, Series 2, and Series 3. Those were leaf spring suspensions, so it didn't give you the articulation. The ride was not as nice. And then when the 110 and 90s came out, it's coil springs at all four corners. So it allows you to get that articulation if you're off-roading, but it also gives you a much nicer ride. So when it comes to coil springs, that's where we ask the questions, how are you going to use it? Interesting story too about this build. We built this for a gentleman in the Midwest, and this is really to if we can say that, I guess you could say honor his father's international scout. They had an international scout and they named it Alvin, so that's why the name of this one is Alvin. But he's going to use it for some off-roading. He is going to go and do off-roading with his friends that have all different types of vehicles, Land Cruisers, Jeeps, you name it. And he's also going to use it for tailgating and hauling his dog around. So can you use it as a daily driver? I have for a number of years. There's no reason you can't. It's not going to be as quiet as a Suburban, nor is it going to be as fast as a Suburban, but it's definitely going to have much more fuel efficiency. It's definitely going to be much more of a looker, and it's definitely going to continue to go up in value unlike a Suburban, which is interesting. Did you know a Suburban is the longest running vehicle in history? It's right up there with the Ford F-150. So we're doing 70 miles an hour, no problem. Coming through a corner. Boy, you can hear those tires. It's 75. So some things you'll notice about the cabin in Alvin. Again, I talked about the leather. It does have diamond stitch. It is Puma seats. Puma seats in the front, which are the Puma Premium. And then it has the high back premium seats in the rear, row of 3. Of course, we could always do a center console if you don't need all 3 seats. The reason we went with 3 seats for this client is for his dogs. It does have a locking center cubby. The cubby console is a steel box, and it is bolted to the truck. So you can put some valuables in there and somebody will play a difficult time trying to get it out of here. Has a full leather dash, leather top, leather bottom. It has air conditioning and heating. The air conditioning and heating system is our exclusive build. We build our own systems. Unlike a lot of Defenders, the builds that you see, that the air conditioning is separate from the heat and the air conditioning runs under the dash. Those systems are nice and they work well, but it's purely air conditioning and then the heat is purely coming out of the top of the dash. So you don't have the two mixed, so your defrost doesn't work as well. So we needed to solve that problem. We set out to solve it a number of years ago and built our own system. So it's a high efficient system, and our clients in the very hot, in the hot climates, Texas, they really appreciate the air conditioning system because the vents we put in are up high. But again, it does combine the air conditioning and heat, so it defrosts your windscreen in humid weather really easy. This one does not have the heated windshield, which we can do. It does have heated seats in the front only. This one does not have the cargo seats in the rear, the center-facing benches, because he wants to be able to use it for tailgating and wants to have as much room as possible. And he said, no one's going to ride in the back, so why do it? Which that's the way I've built mine too, no cargo seats in the rear. It does have Apple CarPlay. It does have a backup camera. This is the Alpine system. It's not the high fidelity, but it is quite nice. It does have a good sound to it. This is a really steep hill. Probably doesn't show so well in video, but it is. You can definitely hear the tractor trailers when they're coming through, shifting down and creeping up this hill. A lot of curves. This one, we did put the Smith clock in it, which I like. It's really reminiscent of the old series truck, and Smith is a company that's from England. As you would expect from a Helderburg, this is a full body off frame restoration. It's funny, everybody you drive past, well, not everybody, but a lot of people you drive past, they just watch you go by, and a lot of them just wave at you. This one does have the billet aluminum trim around the gauges, the billet aluminum door handles that are Helderburg door handles, billet aluminum gear shift knob. I just like the touch of that. It does have the Helderburg mahogany steering wheel. Steering is so easy. It is power steering. So to kind of give you an idea of that, let's climb another hill and find some turns. Again, this has been lifted though and has mud tires. So 50 miles an hour, we'll get up to speed and I'll show you what I mean. I have a lot of people that ask, does it drive like a truck? So you tell me, it is lifted, but does it drive like a truck? "70 miles an hour, and it goes straight on a bumpy road that has a crown. All right, we'll find a road up here, we'll make a turn, and we'll show you how easy it is to turn. Steering wheel comes back to center. Every winter I threaten to move, to leave upstate New York, because the winter is so long and so brutal, so cold. It's not uncommon to be 10, 15 below zero. Fahrenheit, that is. And but then the spring rolls around, or the summer, and it's just so enjoyable because it doesn't get hot. So it's just beautiful. It's scenic here. And I mentioned steering. You'll see that it's not hard to drive one of these, and like I said, I'm driving through some beautiful twisty roads here. I mean, rolling through the corners. So turning radius is a question that I've been asked. And so let's give this a shot here. We're going to pull up. And this road is very narrow. It's barely wide enough for 2 cars. So I'm going to get to the edge of it. And we're going to turn around on this road, show you how easy it is. Wouldn't recommend it, don't do this at home, but anyway. Turn. So 1 turn to the other edge of the road, reverse. One turn back. Went off the road just a little bit there, but you could see the turning radius is not what you would perceive a Defender to be. So turning radius is really good on a Defender. One of the reasons being is these trucks were originally built for farmers to do their work. So it was designed to be very efficient off-road. And that's part of the heritage of it. They are serious off-roaders. Again, coil springs give you more articulation. It does have solid axles, also known as rigid axles. It's not an independent suspension like the modern day Defenders, Land Rovers. Most cars are independent suspension, not a rigid axle. And what I mean by that, a rigid axle, is you have this solid steel shaft from one side to the other that holds the wheels and the tires, versus other vehicles like the new Defender. It does not have that solid axle, so it's not as strong, I guess you could say, not as manly. Quick turn there. Climbing the hill in 3rd gear. It does have a solid, it's steel frame, it's a steel ladder style frame, but it is a frame from the front to the rear, and with those solid axles. So you are moving quite a bit of weight down the road in one of these. So you do have to be, what's the word, intelligent, reasonable, responsible when you're driving one. Because if you were to hit somebody with one of these in the modern day cars at, let's say, 45 miles an hour, if you were to hit someone in pretty much anything on the road today at 45, you'd probably kill them. Because you do have that steel frame, front to rear, solid axles. So you have a lot of weight that's behind you. The body is aluminum, so the doors, the fenders, the hood, everything is aluminum. So that helps with corrosion. But you will see a lot of Defenders that do have corrosion on the aluminum body, but what that's called is called galvanic corrosion, because there's steel touching the aluminum. But when we do the build, we make sure that all the galvanic corrosion's gone, because we're putting new doors, new hood, new fenders, new glass, new everything. And then we're sealing, separating the steel from the aluminum on everything. The speed limit on this road is 55, so I'm trying not to get too carried away. I've been pulled over many a times on my commute, because I do drive a Defender to work. My office is about 50 miles each way. So let's talk about stopping just a little bit. This one does have the performance brakes on it, meaning 6 pistons in the front and 4 pistons in the rear. The rotors are cross-drilled. And then they are also, hopefully I'm saying this correctly, but creatite covered. I don't think I'm saying that correctly, but it's a coating that they do on military grade firearms that allows a lot more wear and use. So not to be crazy, because I don't want to throw Mike around in the truck, but let's bring it down to 30 miles an hour, and then I'll show you what I mean by the braking, as deer do run out in front of us a lot here. So let me bring it down to 30, just not to be stupid. Actually 40, so let's hold on. So that was a pretty quick stop. I didn't really bring it down to 30. I got all excited. It was speed was a little more than that, but as Mike said too, that he said that was not a violent stop. It just stopped. It stopped in a straight line. You didn't hear all the brakes locking up and everything else. So the big performance brakes, which are our design, these are not a rebadged Brembo. They're efficient. They stop. So I have a lot of people ask me, do I really need the big brakes? And our standard brakes stop really well too. And we can try that on another Defender at another video, another time. But yeah, these do stop faster. I mean, there's 6 pistons in the front, 4 pistons in the rear, and it is 4-wheel disc, and the discs are also larger. So you have more surface area for the brake to grab onto and hold. And when we're building these trucks, we are testing extensively. So we build it, we take it out for a drive, put some miles on it. I started not showing those videos anymore because the clients get a little concerned, to be honest. I shouldn't share that, but I tell everything I know, because we do some off-roading, we do highway, we do everything, testing it, and then we take things apart and we check torque, make sure everything's torqued properly and nothing is off. But then I also, you'll see my personal trucks like Enzo and Elizabeth, and those are my test trucks. And we try all kinds of new things, intercoolers, turbos, differentials, transmissions, transfer cases. And I'll tell you, I've blown up a number of motors, because I would much rather blow up a motor on mine testing stuff. And I think that's one of the things that makes it a Helderburg too, that we actually keep the numbers matching and keep the original configuration of the truck, meaning the turbo motor and the intercoolers and all that. But then we performance tune everything, and we have our own performance parts that we've fabricated and designed over the years. But the parts that we're putting on are generally non-wearable parts. So if you ever have a, service problem or whatever, it's easy to be serviced, meaning that you don't need the special parts. I haven't seen anyone else do that as far as builders performance tuning. I've had some people say they do, but when I seen it in person, it wasn't really performance tuned. And we're doing that to the engine, the suspension, the steering, everything. See how easy it is to make a turn? All right, guys, so I think that gives you a pretty good indication of a Helderburg Defender and how it drives, how it sounds, and how it handles, and the speed is plentiful, easy to drive.